In this hot article released at the start of the year, Camille Herron told all ultra runners to skip the long run. Camille is a world-class endurance athlete and holds several world records. So it's fair to say she might have actually been onto something with this. The big problem with long runs is that there are a lot of risk for very little reward. So today I want to go through the positives and negatives to find the hidden secret behind Camille's success. So let's start up from the top. What actually defines a long run? There's always inconsistency from definition to definition, so as a reference in this video, anything over 3 hours will qualify as a long run. So, is a long run really necessary for health or performance? Well, you might have heard of the Hanson's marathon method, where the final long run in the plan peaks at 16 miles. This, alongside a lot of other information in the fitness industry, concludes that you shouldn't run for longer than 3 hours. But after some digging, and trust me, I did a lot, I couldn't actually find any studies which claim that. It's only expert opinions, which, don't get me wrong, they can be valid. They just come from people who work with higher level athletes and are probably running 2:30 marathons anyway. This makes the info pretty useless to anyone above that bracket. So without any real studies or proof about 3 hours being the limit, let's dig into some similar research that does exist. This 1982 study in rats concluded that 90 minutes of exercise per day saw diminishing returns in mitochondrial adaptation compared to those who completed 60 minutes. And it actually gets even worse. Over the 2 and 3 hours, the results were only exaggerated. A more recent 2020 study looked at the relationship between the longest run in a marathon prep, performance, and injury risk. The results found that the runners who peaked at 25 kilometers ran a slower marathon. This was also the case for runners with lower weekly mileage. The research also found that there was essentially no risk of injury, even with runs over 35 kilometers, which is very interesting. Now, this doesn't mean that there's no associated injury risk with running long distances. Of course, if you aren't used to running this kind of volume already, it's definitely not a good idea to just go out there and start running 35 kilometers. Injury actually lies within the rate of your volume increase. So if you didn't slowly build up your volume, you'll likely just get injured. The runners in this study probably had some experience running or had a solid plan in place to reduce this risk. Another point to note is that excessively long easy runs in zone 2 create huge amounts of cardiac drift, meaning that as we become more and more fatigued, our pace will stay consistent and our heart rate will slowly creep upwards over time. So eventually, we'd get to the point where it'd be so difficult to maintain a functional pace that to stay in zone 2, you'd be getting overtaken by your great aunt Jill. Essentially, you'd be that tired that each step would create more stress than it would adaptation. The point at which we reach this state varies from person to person. It's usually around 90 minutes for less trained individuals, all the way to 4 hours for well-trained athletes, with variable factors like climate which can alter these ranges, making it pretty hard to provide exact numbers, but these are a rough estimate. So what are the benefits of training long runs? Well, first off, they are great for practicing your nutrition strategy. Longer bouts of activity give us a chance to prepare for the unknown. By doing these runs, we can test different types of nutrition to see how our body responds to them at later stages in the run. We can also use the increased duration to give us an insight into potential drawbacks that we could have on race day. It could be that we have a piece of gear that's not durable enough or starts causing us irritation. Practicing these long runs can also help us gain experience in managing massive amounts of fatigue. If you're gonna run 100 miles in the future, you better start toughening up your mind to trough through some hard stuff. Otherwise, you're gonna be in for a pretty bad day. So using long runs as a troubleshooting process is a viable method. We should also still be aiming to progress the duration to further test our nutrition and gear setup. If you do plan to race an ultra, race-specific training is crucial. As the great quote from Alex Viada goes, the long run represents the unknown. Please do not leave this until race day. These benefits conclude that long duration runs should be saved basically as a mental strength exercise and a troubleshooting process. There is one problem, however, with this approach. The more experienced you are, the less troubleshooting you'll actually need to do. And this is why Camille can get away with her less frequent long runs than a complete beginner. So, all in all, should you skip your long run? Well, let's add it up. If you're not intending to do an ultra, there's no reason to complete a zone 2 run over 2.5 hours. You'll get all the adaptation you need without the injury or performance risk. It'd just be pointless. If you are going to do an ultra, and let's be honest, a lot of you probably are, definitely use them, but sparingly. Build yourself up to the volume with a rate of no more than 10% on a weekly basis. And remember, be aware of proper fueling and the following days of disrupted recovery. If you're unsure about how slow your long runs or zone 2 training should be, go check out this video next.